Okay, so it's officially 10:02, so we're going to get started. Let me switch over to presentation mode, and let me just move into a couple different screens that I have available. Okay, so this presentation, I named it Access and Prepare Your Data, and it's really involving the tools and approaches that are available for that last mile. Now, if you heard the last mile, it's more of an analogy, running that last line of cable from, the telephone and telecommunications industry, right from, the pole to the home, for example, right? Well, I'm using it in the sense that it's the phase after data has been collected, transformed, replicated, validated, but before it can actually deliver value, right? You're focusing on making data usable, understandable, and ready for decisions. Okay. And why is that important? Because before dashboards, you have to build a data foundation. I promise you, this is not going to be a death by PowerPoint. We're going to get to some really cool stuff with the product, but just want to set some of the stage for you, right? Analytics is, at the end of the day, working with the data. I say data, I'm sorry, that's my New York coming out of me. I had an R to everything. My kids make fun of me for that. Working with the data underneath what I'm called the data. I just made myself laugh and I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry about that. So you want to work with data that's trustworthy, right? That's why you need a strong, governed data foundation that comes first. And most of that real effort happens before any of that dashboard is built, right? Cleaning, organizing, preparing the data so it actually means something. Because no matter how good the dashboard looks, it can't fix bad input, right? Garbage in, garbage out. So we want analytics to scale, stay valuable over time. So we need a consistent, disciplined governance approach to keep that data reliable. Okay. A little bit of statistics coming from the Pragmatic Institute kind of anchors my point. It is a high number. It sounds high, but it is. Industry experts confirm that data scientists and analysts spend approximately 80% of their time allocating, 80% of their time working and preparing with data. Okay, and you can look that up at the pragmaticinstitute.com. And then today, there are 3 challenges in data preparation for that last mile: manual and time-consuming, skill and resource gaps, and data complexity and quality issues. Analysts are dedicating a significant amount of time on preparing that data, and only 20% of it is left for analysis. It's an imbalance. It makes it hard to get quick insights, and it's not at all quick if you think about it, because of the time it's taking to prepare that data. Of course, there's IT bottlenecks when data prep requests come in and they have to go through governed experts, and the challenge is balancing self-service and non-technical users along with proper governance. So we're going to shift, and we're going to show you the data products and quality capabilities to make a user-friendly environment working efficiently with these tools. And keep in mind, keep AI on the bottom of your mind for this, right? Because we're preparing analytics for the traditional sense of working with answering business questions, but we're also preparing it for AI as well. Okay, so there's 3 approaches to data prep. In the beginning of this presentation, I was going to really have a history of it, but I was like, well, that's not going to do anybody good, especially any new users. Who cares about the history? So let's go through the modern available approaches right now in the product to help you quickly understand how to access and prepare data. And we've introduced some new tools within the past year and this year. Table Recipe, which is a no-code focused on field level operations, no-code tool for that. Then there's Data Flow, which is no-code to low-code, focused on table level operations, and you're going to see all of this. And then, of course, the data load editor using script. And I have all examples prepared for you from that perspective. So let's talk about that last mile. Okay, these are just some of the bullets for that. Tailoring data to specific business needs, formatting, final transformation, data enrichment, quality and usability checks, and deliver and accessibility. I'm not going to obviously go through these verbatim. These are some of the key areas to focus on when we talk about making that governed foundation for analytics. And I'll have this deck available when I post this within the Qlik community. Okay, but first, let's use what we have. First time you create an app. So for those of you who are familiar with, hey everybody, I appreciate you joining. Thank you guys. For those of you who are familiar with using Qlik Cloud and accessing an app for the first time, you're greeted with a number of ways of creating or accessing the data to be loaded into the app, right? You have data connections, files, manual entry, the data catalog, which I'm very curious to know if anybody on this stream who's watching uses that, because that is some of the most amazing stuff that I found that I'm going to present to you today. And then the data load editor. And I must admit, creature of habit, I use the data load editor a lot because that's just how it was introduced to me, over 13 years ago. And we had other ways of preparing data, but that's something that I was used to. So when you create the app for the first time, you see this. You create an app in Qlik Cloud and you have data catalog, files and other sources, and data load editor. Somebody might be confused. Some new users might be like, well, where do I begin? Hopefully here will help, alleviate that and show you how to get started and where each one of these are important. Okay. Other things to keep in mind, there's other ways to load data into Qlik, upload files directly into an app. You can import a number of different file types, including geographic, Parquet, your standard delimited files. It's a great way for quick prototyping, ad hoc, one-off analytics. It does provide some basic data prep and lightweight transformation type features and data preview. You can just go right in and connect to a data source, including web APIs, cloud sources. Use these as reusable governed connections that are managed by admins. And all of this will support the schedule reloads and secure credential handling. There's the ability to manually enter data into tables. Back in the day, we called it an inline load. Well, now there's a UI that can use that. It's great for lookup tables, data islands. It's editable through the data load editor and the data manager, creating small reference tables. And then there is the binary load. Okay, now all a binary load is think of an existing app with a data model, and you just want to access that data model into a new app. Okay, so you can reference an existing app through a QVF or even an app ID, and I have prep to show you that today. So let's go through a quick demo. This is, I know, what you guys have been waiting for. Please don't forget, use those little icons if you wish to send those hearts and smiley faces when you see something you like. It helps keep me engaged because I don't have the opportunity to view your smiling faces or head nods as I'm presenting. So I'm in Qlik Cloud right now, and a lot of the things that I do want to mention also, so if you want to take advantage of what I'm about to show you, you have to be on Qlik Cloud for this. So I'm going to navigate my activity centers, and one of the activity centers here is the catalog. So I can click on an app. We're not going to do that, right? We're going to take this from the perspective of a user, an analyst, maybe even a power user who wants to create a report, right? They know they want to create a report on sales data. Let's just keep it that way, all right? Let's keep it simple. So they navigate the catalog. Now, the catalog is a collection of, don't even know how to coin it, a ton of different object types. Charts, apps, datasets, scripts, data flows, table recipes, notes. Like, we'll cover this all in due time. Again, we have education, learning, and all that stuff. But I know I want to look for data, right? And I'm not exactly sure what data is available to me, so I'm going to choose a data set. So you might be wondering, what is a data set? If you're old school Qlik and you're thinking, well, don't I upload data into a Qlik app? Yes, you used to do that, but these are new modern approaches to working with governed, trusted data, right? We're using that trusted data foundation. And we have more coming into this. You might have heard of something called data products, which is available in Qlik Cloud. That's going to be moving over to Qlik Analytics as well. Stay tuned for information on that. So here are all of my data assets, and they have names. And each of these data assets allow me to explore and discover and understand what I'm working with. So later in the presentation, I'm going to click this one, but right now I'm looking at just like something that is interesting to me, such as, I was looking for data for the US in regards to sales. So I'm just going to open this data set. And in front of me, I have a number of pieces of information that give me the comfort that I know that the data I'm working with is of high quality and is going to meet my specific needs. Now, obviously, I use a very small tenant, but the reason I know this is I can see that this data is used within 3 apps. I can see that the view activity, there's 2 visitors. It has 9 views. I can see the validity score, completeness, discoverability, usage are all in the high range, right? Measures proportion of non-empty values, measures proportion of valued values against expected data types. It overall has a trust score of 4.45. Okay, so one of these things that is very important when you look at this data is the trust score. And the trust score is just basically bringing multiple aspects of data quality and usability into one simple metric, making it easier to understand the overall health of the data set. Okay, I'm just going to keep it at that. I could look at the data quality, and I could see of all the fields. I can see the data types, if there's any tags, but notice how everything is in the green. Trust me, we're not going to have everything in the green a little bit later in the demonstration. But again, this allows me to look at this data perfectly so I can understand what's in it. In the past, as a SQL admin, I'd be using SQL client tools and running data previews and running SQL queries, trying to understand the profile of the data. Here I have my field names, my data types, my distinct values, my null values, even the sample values. I have a data preview page, again, along with the progressive disclosure of the green bar showing me the health and quality of the data. I even have lineage showing me how this was prepared, showing me the origins. So we can see that this US sales summary data is actually using a SQL server to bring in my categories. And it's also accessing in this case, I used an Excel file, could be any of the sources. And it's combining it, and it's actually putting that into being prepared in a data flow, part of that last mile, as I mentioned. Then it gets written out into the Qlik file store. And then it looks like that Jonathan Doe actually took this data and further prepared it using table recipe. Interesting. And then finally, it writes out to the final data store that's used. Well, let me see where this data is used. So I'm going to go to impact analysis now. So we get 4 apps using this data. An app called Binary Load, an app called JD US Sales Summary, another one called US Sales Summary. So Jonathan Doe is really using this data a lot. And he did it 20 hours ago. And this guy, he only worked on it an hour ago. And then we have the US Sales Summary app. So that's interesting. This has got all of the metrics, all of the fields that I need. So I'm just going to actually select this and click Open. So I started out wanting to create analytics for my US Sales Summary data, and I wind up finding an app already that has my metrics that I need to perform my analysis. Now, guys, obviously, I have created a ton of beautiful dashboards, and our community and luminaries and all of you customers have done so as well. I did not spend time making this beautiful because I didn't have time to do that. And you get the point. This is very simple dashboard creation. So it started out with me wanting to create analytics off of a governed data set. I used the data catalog to explore and discover what was available. And it turned out with lineage and impact analysis, I already have what I need. And I don't have to create anything. Okay, so that is a great way of exploring and using the catalog within the Activity Center of Qlik Cloud. Now, you can do this for a variety of different things. Again, questions that are coming in, I am going to address those as they come in because I just don't want to interrupt the flow, and I know everybody has time schedules. But yes, and thank you for all the comments and questions coming in. All right. So that being said, I also have a screen offside that at this point I'm going to look to this side here. I try to keep myself honest when it comes to the actual presentation of the objects for the demo flow because I like to make sure I cover everything. So we explored that data catalog in the Activity Center. Right now we're going to take it from the perspective of like a power user or a developer, again, who wants to now create something new. And this is where we're going to get into utilizing those tools. So the way we're going to do that is I do have that presentation here. So we're going to go back to that presentation. And we talked about this and this, and we talked about the data catalog, right? Again, these slides I prepared for you so you can have reference to what I presented, right? I'm not a big believer in reading off of slides. I mean, I do have summarizations and notes for it, but I already kind of covered all of this. So tools to prepare the data. Okay, so this is a quick summary of I call them interfaces, right? They're the user interfaces that you're going to come across in Qlik Cloud. You have the data load editor, advanced scripting, right? Including light transformations or even, heavy transformation back before, ETL was a thing, so to speak, or other ETL tools evolved into what they are today, right? You would transform data using apply map. You would use functions and expressions to basically have inputs and outputs and, put something in and change the date format, etc. So that being said, inline load, binary load, subroutines, branching logic, all that, I wrote subroutines twice, combining tables, cross-table, all that stuff is possible. Then there's the data manager, which was introduced a lot earlier when the Qlik Sense was released. It's still there, helps you with associating and linking tables, light data quality, light transforms, which I'll show you, table recipe, and then data flow. And I'm going to show you why and when those are important. Right, so no-code data flows in Qlik Cloud Analytics. Combine and shape multiple data sets with a visual flow, right? There's 20, I call them preprocessors, but 20 processors or data blocks for shaping the data. It has native integration with the Qlik Cloud platform, right? Ultimately, what you're doing is think of like the data load editor in a visual form, where you're dragging and dropping, defining inputs and outputs and targets, and in between all of the little processes that prepare, I'm going to say the word transform for those of you who joined earlier, had a big thing about semantics, and then make that data available into a target, right? And that target is going to be, it's not your traditional output relational source like a Snowflake, for example. It's going to be a data store in the form of Qlik's QVD file or a Parquet file or a CSV or text file, known, true, tried, and tested. Then there's table recipe. And this is for this a single table where data flow is multiple tables and multiple types of transforms. Table recipe is preparing a single table in an interactive playground, they call it, right? It's an Excel-like structure, spreadsheet-like experience. It's got 60 plus prep functions. It also has built-in profiling and filtering capabilities, and you're going to see that as well. And then, of course, my favorite, the script editor, or we call it the data load editor. Think of this for the advanced multi-purpose full flexibility. I am not going to read these directly because I have some awesome examples that I'm going to show you that I built for it. And I'm sure those who are familiar also have it. I created a slide called bonus content for the leave behind. Yes, you are going to get a copy of these slides. I just created a list of many things that people will be like, why would I use the data load editor, right? Well, there's different reasons why you would. Inline loads, binary loads, subroutines, branching logic, combining tables, resident load, mapping tables, preceding load, derived fields, cross table, generic load, incremental load, QVD load, store, section access. That's a cut and paste, obviously. Section access again. It's just so good it needed to be done twice. Variable parameterization using data connections, error handling and debugging, table dropping, renaming, temporary tables, data islands, all this type of stuff. The list just goes on. Okay. So let's go back and let's go into some of the next thing I mentioned, using the data catalog, but this time we're going to now introduce table recipe and data flow. And then at the end of that, I'm going to go in and show you the data load editor and some of the other tools. Now, from the perspective of a use case of a developer or a power user, analyst, looking at data, I want to look at this raw data. I just listed it as raw because I wanted to look at this. Remember, we had that Qlik trust score. Now notice some of the data quality where you have empty, valid, invalid, right? So it's looking at all the fields and it's using data validation rules, a default set of data validation rules that you can define to make you aware that we have some quality issues within our data. Look at our postal code here, 50% invalid values. So right off the bat, you're made aware that, well, this data is not analytic, AI ready, so to speak. So it's going to need a little bit of prep behind it. Same concept, profile the data, data preview, automatically highlight the areas of concern, right? We even notice that we have some emails that are not right. 0.1% are invalid. Okay, obviously going through this very quickly. We got a mix of full name text countries along with ISO 3 codes and ISO 2 codes in here as well. So that's not standard, right? We need to standardize this. And then we have some empty values here for customers. Okay, understanding the value of the data catalog. Now, before we get back into this, I do need to share this with you, right? Because these live streams about tips and tricks and nuances. How do I get the data into the data catalog? Well, I want to create new and I want to create data connection. No, wrong. That is not what you want to do. Data connections are just that, data connections to pull in when you're using the tools such as the data load editor or other processes through Dataflow where we access connections. So I want to create a data set, which we also call registered data. Look, I'm not going to get into how they organize and how they name stuff. I'm here just to tell you how it works. So you create a data set. And when you create a data set, you either upload a supported data file type, which is a ton, and you put it in a specific space, or you create a connection to be used, or you use an existing data connection. And then you bring in that supported, not all data connections support registered data catalogs. Like for example, a Dropbox is a file system, so it's not going to know to support that. But a Dropbox can be, a file could be accessed as a registered data connection. Okay, so understand that it's a supported data connection, and then you select that data, and when you bring it in and bring those tables in, it will register it as a cataloged data set. Okay, so keep that in mind. So as mentioned, you open up that data set. We have data preview, lineage, impact analysis, all that good stuff we talked about earlier, right? So what I want to do now is, I mentioned earlier, we have some of this already used, right? So I'm going to, present this like a cooking show. I'm not going to start from scratch. I'm going to open up the existing ones. We see Michael Tarallo has created a data flow. Jonathan Doe has created a table recipe. So we're going to go in and we're going to open up and we're going to look at these particular objects. So I do it from the catalog. It can be done directly from the interface within the data preview, data profiling. But I'm going to change my types from data sets to data flows and table recipes. And you can see we have two here, access and prepare. That's a table recipe, and I just called them access and prepare. This is for my knowledge for presenting. Open data flow. So let's look at the data flow. Another thing I love about how they really combine, they provide the interfaces that I've shown you, and they combine them within the different types of tooling, right? So here I can still see little lineage, right? I can see inputs, I can see outputs, I have notifications, run history, publish copies. I really just want to go directly to the editor. And there's my data flow. You have connections, as I mentioned, and you have data sets, as I mentioned already. Those are your sources. You have processors, which are ways of branching and orchestrating and controlling flow, joining, combining, aggregating, sorting, removing fields, strings, dates, numbers, concatenate fields, split, blah, 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 blah. Oh, look at this. I can actually turn on a script preview as well if I wanted to, right? So as I mentioned, think of everything, almost everything, right? Because we keep introducing new processors to the data flow. We just recently introduced the ability to actually pull in a table recipe as a object within a data flow. You have a Qlik script object, so you can code your, to your heart's content in there. But let's look at what we're doing here. So here's our raw Excel file from the data catalog. And here's a source coming from SQL Server, bringing in our categories. At any time in the data flow, I can click preview and I can see and work with my data. What's this? A JSON object as a field? Oh no, I've never saw that before. Oh my God, it's so common. I don't even know if you guys have used this. I have used it. There are ways of parsing through it. I have a number, and plus our data integration tools like Qlik Cloud actually automatically go through this and create new fields and tables out of it. It's amazing. But anyway, that's a story for another day. So now I'm joining these. I'm doing an inner join on category ID. I'm now selecting only the fields that I want as part of my curated, governed, trusted data. Since my team is only interested in US, I'm filtering on where the value is USA. I'm masking a phone number here because I want to protect the customer. I do not want their phone number exposed. I'm branching off non-US data off to a separate output, which is a QVD file, and I'm just storing it in my Dropbox Cloud repository. I'm calculating profit, margin, and origin, which are just calculated fields. So profit is basically a combination of sales minus cost. Margin is sales minus cost divided by sales. And what's this? Oh, origin is using JSON get, and it's automatically parsing the JSON object and giving me the origin of where the product was manufactured. So at any time, I can click preview, and I could see the resulting data set And there we go. Category, order date, order status. There's my origin, margin, profit. Awesome. Ready to go. Analytical ready, used. I'm going to export this as US sales only clean. Extension either QVD, Parquet, TXT, or CSV. And then I'm going to run my flow. When you run the flow, it automatically registers that data in the data catalog. So again, I'm not covering permissions and security, right? That's all we all have the capability of doing that, right? So whoever has access to that space and has the appropriate roles will be able to access that data. So at that time, bear with me as I duplicate this tab. Now I go to catalog. I go to datasets. And now we'll have US sales only clean QVD uploaded less than a minute ago. So now I could open up this data set, explore it. Oh, we still have a problem with origin. What's going on there? All right, well, we could rename this profile, basically start to make it ready. But apparently Jonathan had a problem and he basically wanted to fix that origin problem, right? Because nothing is ever perfect when it's coming out of the on-demand data stores or the analytical data warehouses or anything like that, I'm assuming. So let me show you a table recipe. Now, what I'm going to show you first is creating a new table recipe, and then I'm going to open up the existing one. You just hit create table recipe, delete me later, Mike. That's how I know to clean up my stuff. And it brings you into an interface that is spreadsheet-like, that has a number of functions and processing components to perform that data prep. Okay, what is the first thing that it does? It's prompting to select what? A data set, right? Upload a data file, right? So data sets are the ones that are registered. So in this case here, it doesn't have to be a data file, okay? It can be a registered data set. So if you had something that was registered from a SQL connection or a relational database, it would be in here. This is just now showing me the ones that I have access to. And then I could just select the one that we just 2 minutes ago. And then here's all the profiling again. I mean, a lot of good stuff that's here. We want to select all of these fields. I click next. Gives me a summary. Load into table recipe. Still would love to know where they come up with these names. Now the data is loading, and now we have the spreadsheet-like interface where this is really cool too, right? Again, last mile data prep. So once this loads, you select your columns, you select the functions that you want to do. It gives you a subset, load it into rows, gives you a nice summary of everything that's up there, kind of even gives you some instructions. Blah, blah, blah. I'm going to now open up the next one just to show you. I love this part right here, the data distribution for the selected columns. It shows you the values and the occurrences and the histogram. I mean, it's just an awesome way of starting to discover and explore the data before you start to transform it. So let me go in and open up the existing one now. So we're going to go to table recipes this time. And here's the one called Access and Prepare. Okay, and this one was created by Jonathan Doe. He's the owner. So what did Jonathan do? So basically you select a column and perform a function on it. There's the ability to perform filtering as well. And then ultimately what we're doing is we're just outputting this target. So first thing we're doing is delete column JSON origin. Why? Because we don't need the JSON object available. Second, I guess that's kind of why they called a table a recipe. Second, I'm rounding value using half up margin, precision 3. Third, search and replace, origin equals Canada. And so we're already preparing this for an ISO 3. So right now we're just lightly changing some data quality. So it's changing Canada to CAN. And we're changing Europe to GBR because that's the correct location because Europe is not specifically a country code. And then search and replace origin, changing the full value of United States to USA. And then you can see here, once that's applied, and just to give you an example of how it's actually working, because I don't always like to leave, I like to show you how these things work. I'm just going to delete the origin equals the United States. And you're going to see in real time how it manipulates that data, and you have it. There's your origin. There's your United States. So I'm going to explore general, columns, strings, search and replace, remove part, contains text, match similar text, extract value, by index, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to obviously go into this. So I'm just going to do a very simple search and replace. And we're going to change origin. And we're going to say equals United States and replace it with USA. Click apply. And now we have our clean ISO 3 origin code. Okay, and then ultimately we're just outputting it to a file named US Sales Analytics Ready.qvd. And now we're going to run the recipe. And all of this can be set at a schedule. Remember, any of those objects that are in the catalog, they have the ability to set schedules so you can get the freshest data. So that's run. I'm just going to go back to the catalog. And there's a couple things I wanted to show you, right? So here's your data recipe, your table recipe. Schedule, run now, right? You have all the same menu options that are available. Same thing with data flows. There's your data flow, run now, schedule, etc. That's probably a good stream to show you how to do the different tasks. We have new task scheduling as well, which is, and they're dependent on each other too. They'll look for success and failure, and you can actually chain them together. Okay, so now we have that data set, and there it is, U.S. sales only clean. Let's look at it. We still got a couple of invalid values, and that's probably because of the email address, or is it the origin? Okay, this is perfect. This is why I wanted to show you this. Okay, so if you remember, we cleaned origin, but I think the data validation rule, if I go to data preview and we go to origin, we can see that it has country name, ENFRJP. That's because that is the data validation rule. Maybe our data validation rule is there an ISO 3 country code. Oh, there it is. So these are pre-packaged validation rules. Now, what validation rules are, they're not ultimately affecting the output. It has nothing to do with the output of the analytics. It has to do with the discoverability and understanding of the data for the trust score and the data quality issues, right? So understand that. So what I just did is now change that validation rule to be ISO code 3 because that's what it was. And now we have good data quality on country. So data validation. So remember when I started the presentation off, I was saying things I didn't know, things I haven't worked with because it wasn't brought to my attention. Working with data validation rules, I can add a new data validation rule. And you can see I already created one. I can make suggestions with AI. City, email, country, non-negative sales, valid customer ID, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to get into all of this. Or I can create brand new ones. And I could use, for example, patterns, values, logic, conditions, right? All of this is to help and ensure the trustworthiness of the data, the quality of the data. See, these are data validation rules, right? I can create patterns, for example. Descriptions, category, validity, accuracy, consistency, integrity, severity, right? These are all ways of making the data trustworthy and letting the people know that the data they're working with are trustworthy. So if you're familiar with data validation rules, we have that built in as part of the data catalog. Okay, little trick and nuance though. You'll notice I'm in analytics. Well, where are my data validation rules? Well, they happen to be in data integration under data quality. Okay. So again, I'm just telling you how it works and where it is. These are all going to eventually merge under, and same thing with data products. That's another discussion for another day. But again, just keep in mind. So here's my custom data validation rules that I built. Okay. So that, getting back to my flow, you saw data flow, you saw a data recipe, table recipe. Now I'm going to just show you about the other methods and approaches, right? So first, we're just going to go into a very quick example of a binary load, right? So we created that app. You guys are going to love this. Well, those of you might already know where I'm going with this, right? So there's this app. It's called US Sales Summary. And this is just a trick that I know of. There will be a way to prompt AI directly for new data validation rules. I believe so. Don't quote me on that, but I did hear something about that. So I don't know if it will be available, but that is a good suggestion, and I believe that is something they're working on. Check this out. This is the GUID, Global Unique Identifier. This is just an ID that we use to identify an app. Okay. I'm grabbing this because I want to show you something. If I go into the data load editor, this is the original data model that was loaded with all the tools and stuff that we created earlier. And we'll talk about that later. Okay. But you can see there's the data model. I can use this as a source for another app if I wanted to. So I have an app here called binary load, and this is just obviously to quickly navigate everything. And there's two ways of doing a binary load. And this is where, again, advanced scripting and data load editor and, tips and tricks and techniques come in. I can say binary and then just put in the GUID. Oops, that was not the GUID. That was not the GUID. That was text for my presentation that I was preparing for. So that's the GUID that I showed you. Or I can say binary and access a QVF as a file stored somewhere like a cloud source or a data store. So now here I'm loading that, and there's the data model. Same data model that we use, but now it's available for me to go in, create a sheet, grab a chart, grab a KPI, add a measure, and start creating analytics, right? So that's an example of utilizing binary load. Let me go into the catalog. Now we talked about prototyping, and we talked about quickly ad hoc creation. Create new analytics app. Delete this later, Mike. And we're going to put it in the do more with Qlik space. You will only see this screen the first time you create an app. As soon as you load data or create a sheet, you do not see this screen again. You have to access it either through these menus up here or these menus up here. Okay. This is just a way of quick starting you to access data from the catalog, access data from files and other sources, access data from a data load editor. Let's go into files and other sources. This is how you access data directly from prepared connections or start creating new connections or uploading data. Or did you guys know that I can just go in here and cut and paste, let's say from Excel, and go into manual entry. And this is how you create an inline load. And I can call this categories. And then I just select my area and Control V. And then I click next. Click close. Now I can start creating new analytics, but I need to go into my data manager this time. And there's my table. So you can cut and paste. If we look at the data load editor, you're going to see what it just did. It basically did an inline load in the form of script. Okay. So now I'm in the data manager, and the data manager also performs light transforms, but it also allows you to visually see the linking and associations. So I'm going to add more data, and this time I'm going to go from files and other sources, and I'm going to choose from my SQL Server connection. And I have an owner, DBO, and there's, again, categories. So that's got my JSON in it. So I'm going to click next. And then I'm going to delete this categories because we don't need that. Now I'm going to go back in. And this time from the data catalog, I'm going to choose the US sales only clean data that we created finally with the table recipe. Click Next, load into app. Okay, so now, what happened here? Screen size. So US sales only clean data and categories. Remember, this one's going to be deleted. I can use the suggestion here to show me how these tables are going to be linked. And by default, they want to link on category name because they have the same values, but that's not what I need. I want to link on category ID in this case here. So what I can do is I can look at the other options. What's going on here? Let me refresh. I just had a little hiccup on my screen, and I think maybe some JavaScript or something got screwy. This is supposed to open up for me here, and I'm not opening it. Let me just load the data. Might have had a little bit of a network hiccup that screwed something up. I'm not too sure exactly what happened. It happens sometimes over here. Okay, so right now it's linking these on categories, on the actual category name. Of course, during the demonstration, there we go. I just want to take this one and take that one. There we go. I'm sorry. I was using the automated tools. I wanted to use the manual tool on that. Okay, so that's where the difference was here. So I grab my categories, I link it together. You see it's looking to associate these on category name. What the hell is going on? My screen got so... Let's do this one more time. Okay. I want to link these together. I choose category name. There we go. I want to select category ID as my link. Could even create a custom association. Do not pay attention to the man behind the curtain. I'm trying to see if I screwed up something along the way with this data. Is this because category ID doesn't exist? Oh my God. Guys, I chose the wrong data set. Let me delete that. I apologize. Now I feel like a fool. Okay. Let's add data. Files and other sources. There we go. Okay. So from the data files, I want to select my 2025 Getting Started Excel file. So what happens when you get on a roll and then you start getting too cocky and you get confused. Okay, there's my category ID. Click Next. So the tool was doing the right thing. It was forcing me to work on category name because category name was the only field that had something in common. So the tool was doing the right thing. It was me who selected the wrong table. There we go. So now we're linking these two tables on category ID. I click Load. Sorry about that. And now the data is loaded successfully. Now, if I wanted to use this as is, I could, but I could actually go in and edit and do some light transforms on this data. I could do, obviously renaming fields. I can change data types. I can perform, for example, light transforms, set nulls, order, split. I could even select like a measure and create buckets. So for example, I can go in and click sales. And I can say create 3 buckets and change the range for these buckets. This is small deals. And this one's going to be medium deals. And that one's going to be large deals. So we're actually now, creating a series of dimensional values for the range of the sales. So and you'll see on the right, small deals, etc. So you can use that as a value and select it from a dropdown. So just show me all small deals. I can say add a field, add a calculated field, profit. And that's going to be sum minus cost. Or I could use sum minus cost. I'm so funny. Sales minus cost. And there's the preview. And click create. Okay, so this is some of the other capability that's available for ad hoc, what I call prototyping, quick understanding. And now we load that data. Thank you, Mark. I see you responded to Atala. And that was similar to what I thought as well, that we are working on something for AI validation rules. So now I go to the sheet. I create new analytics. I go to fields. And there's my profit. And there's my sales bucketed. Small deals, medium deals, large deals. Okay. All right. So we're going to wrap this up shortly. Keeping myself honest, I've showed you almost everything. Now I'm going to show you why you would want to use the data load editor. And I'm going to show you how I use it. So just to give you a really cool example, one of my colleagues helped me with this example. And I have data that is stored in a JSON object. And it is a representation of the number of items, line items, from a JSON object that's stored in a Shopify database. So when an item is ordered, the order could have multiple items. So for example, Kurt here. Kurt has ordered 1, 2, 3, actually he's ordered 2 of these particular items. Well, that object is stored in JSON. And the way it's stored, it looks like this. Actually, as an object in a field. It's not a JSON file. It's stored in the database. Like that. Well, I used data load editor to basically loop and parse that. So the first thing I do, if you guys remembered, I gave you an example of JSON in a field, right? So this is just loading the JSON. And I'm as a representation here is just as a text field. So we have one long string of a JSON object. Then we have key value pairs. So what I'm doing here is I'm loading it. I'm looking for the keyword variant. Okay, that's the keyword. Variant is what I'm looking for. And what it's doing is it's going to substring count how many times it finds the actual value variant. And it gives it a name quantity. Okay, and this is resident is just meaning it's coming from the existing table, data JSON field. It's using the existing data that's been loaded in memory. Then I create a new table called max line items. Load max quantity as max quantity. So all it's doing now is just creating a new column called max quantity. Now I'm using a variable, let vmax items, and then the peek function, which looks into the table, pulls out the value. And then I'm doing a for loop. For I equals 0 to, and by the way, it's setting up a variable, max items. It's just creating up so in other words, for I equals 0, 1 to 4, it's going to now look at and set new columns that I'm going to use as variables. vtitle, quantity, price, variant title, new product ID. And it then uses your increment pointer. And then I'm using /title, /quantity, /original unit. These are actual search strings that you use in JSON to pull out the value from the key pair, right? So these /title, /quantity, these exist as keys inside this JSON object. So you kind of need to know your data when you're doing stuff like this. So then I create a new table called line items table, and then purge char JSON. All this does is clean up my JSON string, and then I'm using JSON get, which is a function that searches a JSON string and pulls out these key values and assigns them as title, quantity, price, variant, blah, blah, blah. And then I say as options. Okay, and the name of that table is line items table. So now we look at line. Now this is not Kurt's order. This is another order that had 8 items in it. Oh no, I'm sorry. This was Kurt's order. I think this was another order had 4 items in it. And now here's my line items table. Now this would be linked to a order ID. Let's just put it that way. But this was just to show you an example of how I'm using Qlik Script and the data load editor to do more advanced data transformation. Now, this probably could be handled with Qlik Cloud directly within its data pipeline and its data transformation flow object. Okay, but again, I'm not using Qlik Cloud here. I'm just giving you examples of why I could use this to break down that object. Okay, now another area it could be used in is also creating subroutines, right, to be called later. So I have another object in my staging tenant. I'm just going to show you this example, and then we are pretty much done. This is probably the longest live stream I did, but it was also the most comprehensive as well. And you know, I love sharing what I've learned with you all, because I want you to put it into practice and then share with me what awesome stuff you're doing with Qlik. Okay, so I think it's called incremental load script example. Let me see here. Okay, so this is another way of utilizing Qlik Script to create functions or subroutines. So this one's called sub load change store. vTenant, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inputs. Does a bunch of stuff, which I'm not going to get into because I don't have to worry about it. And then all I have to do is say call load change store, tenant, space, change store ID, change store name, connection name. Okay, and that's another example of using data load script for more advancing, right? So creating custom subroutines that you can call to perform other actions, right? This is not just about transforming data for analytics. This is actually like now using data along with programmatic flows within your application if you wanted to create additional workflows or additional things. Obviously, we have automation, Qlik Automate for stuff like that too. But again, just showing you what's possible utilizing Qlik Script in the data load editor. And then I had that bonus page that I saved for you in the PowerPoint. It'll be available when I post all of the samples and the presentation in the Qlik community, and you can look at that on your own time. So other than that, I have covered everything, I think. The one thing I didn't cover, I think within the data flow, is you did want to see, somebody did mention about the script. So I am going to go into data flows. I'm going to bring up my access and prepare data flow. So you can see the script that is generated for each of the blocks. And that you're looking at the bottom left, I'm assuming. So just make sure you see that. All right.